Hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to the UTM English and Drama Student Society's Alumni Panel on Careers and the Next Steps Post-Graduation. My name is Ishwa Desai, my pronouns are she, her, and I am a fourth-year student at UTM doing a double major in English and Political Science. This year, I'm also the president of the English and Drama Student Society. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the land on which UTM stands. We wish to acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. I'd also like to thank UTM Alumni Relations for partnering with us on tonight's event, and it has been a great pleasure to work with them. Tonight's alumni panel discussion will help increase your awareness of potential paths and opportunities that may be available to you when you're thinking about your career after graduation. We will begin with a moderated discussion with our panelists, and then we will open it up for questions from the audience. You're welcome to submit questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, but please wait until closer to the end of the first half of this session as we may cover your questions during the moderated portion. I'm now delighted to introduce our alumni panelists. First, we have Sara Ishar. Sara graduated from UTM with a double major in English and Management, followed by a Master of Global Affairs, International Relations from UofT's Munk School of Global Affairs and Public Policy in 2018. She's an investigative journalist, published author, and researcher with experience in 6 countries writing about foreign affairs, human rights, and security. Sara has extensive experience both academically and professionally in the field of countering violent extremism. She's been published in Canada's leading public policy think tank, the Mackenzie Institution, and is interested in issues of national security and corruption. She has completed a posting specializing in counter-violent extremism efforts with the British Foreign Commonwealth Office and has worked as an advisor for Canada's National Security Intelligence Review Committee. Currently, Sara works as an intelligence analyst at the Canadian Bankers Association. Before working there, she was a senior analyst of anti-terrorist financing for CIBC, and prior to that, as an advisor for the Israel Innovation Authority in Tel Aviv. Thanks for joining us, Sara. And for our second panelist, I would like to welcome Alexi Brown. Alexi graduated from UTM in 2014 with a double major in English and History. In 2017, Alexi completed a Master of Museum Studies and Master of Information in the combined degree program at UofT's Faculty of Information. I'm happy to share that Alexi has transitioned from her role as museum coordinator at the Morris and Sally Justine Heritage Museum at Baycrest Health Sciences to take on a new role as digital media and engagement coordinator at the Springboard Clinic in Toronto. Congratulations on your new role, Alexi. In her new role, Alexi will support this innovative ADHD clinic and their clients through grant writing, market research, and business strategies. Alexi enjoys using her skills to contribute to organizations through improving the client experience, creating a better business, and engaging programming. Previously, Alexi has worked as a freelance program evaluator at the Power Plant Contemporary Art Gallery, a media librarian at the CBC, a collection, information, and image resources assistant at the Art Gallery of Ontario, a qualitative analyst at the Royal Ontario Museum, and as an education intern at the Toronto Zoo. Welcome, Alexi. Now I'd like to introduce the moderator of our discussion, Roxy. Roxy is a second-year undergraduate student at UTM, specializing in English and minoring in education studies. She's the Social and Academics Events Director at EDSS, which is the English and Drama Student Society. And Roxy is also a part of the production staff at EndNote, the Hart House Literary and Library Committee's podcast. Without further ado, I'll pass the mic to you to get things started.
Thank you, Ishwa, and thank you to our panelists for joining us this evening.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Roxy. Thanks, Ishwa.
Yeah, I'm excited to start.
Yes. Well then, without further ado, I believe that we can move on to the Q&A portion of our evening. We have some questions that have come right in from the audience, so I guess I'll just jump right in. The first one is addressed to the both of you, and it says, can each of you tell us briefly what your career paths were like right after graduation? I'll start with whichever one. Sara, would you be free to start?
Sure. So I graduated in 2014 and I had no idea what I was doing. I had done a double major in English literature as well as management, two very different interests. And all I knew after graduating was that I wanted to do something where I could write. So I've always loved writing. I think anyone who's in the English program, loves to write and to read. That's why we're there. And I knew that's something that I wanted in the job that I pursued after graduation. And I was lucky enough that I was at one of UofT's job career fairs, I think, and South China Morning Post, this newspaper, was there hiring grads as investigative journalists. And so I applied. It was a 6-interview process and it was a whirlwind, but I got the job. And so I started right off the bat as a journalist, which was something I never thought I would do. But as I was, on the field, interviewing, researching, and writing, I realized oh my God, I love doing this. I love asking questions. I love learning. It was an on everyday learning kind of job environment. And I think that really catapulted the trajectory of the rest of my career. So I started interviewing various government officials, industry specialists. My favorite person to name drop is I interviewed the former Prime Minister of Finland. And so after that, I was like, I want to be in political science. So then I went back to school and did my thesis in the intersection between counterterrorism policies and gender. And from there, that has sort of shifted my career trajectory from just investigative journalism to intelligence and research analysis in countering violent extremism, counterterrorism, but also security in general. So the job I do right now focuses on bank robberies. And throughout all of this, I've continued to write. I write on the side. It's a hobby I've continued to pursue, but I'm really happy to say that I've managed to incorporate that through research in the job that I do now. So I think that was a long-winded answer to that question, but I hope I answered it.
No, definitely. Thank you so much. It sounds like quite an experience. I'm so happy to hear that you found something that's of interest to you. Sure. I suppose I'll pass it off to Alexi then.
Yeah, so my career path after graduation was a little bit more sort of random. So like Sara, I graduated from UTM in 2014, and I immediately went into a double master's program in museum studies and information. I was always sort of interested in the museum field, and after doing some volunteer work with the ROM and the National Ballet Archives, I was pretty set on pursuing a career path as an archivist or a curator, which is something I discovered through the career services at UTM. I went to them to kind of explore different career paths, and that was one that interested me. And yeah, from there I learned lots of things about the museum studies field and about information. And through my internships at the Toronto Zoo, it just kind of more cemented this is where I wanted to be. I really liked doing the research part of it, and also being able to synthesize information and communicate it with visitors. So once I graduated from that, I did a lot of contract work in many different areas. I think Ishwa mentioned I did some data analysis with the power plant gallery. So I was exploring different areas of the museum field. And then I eventually ended up at Baycrest working on like a tech application for them, which was sort of like outside my comfort zone, but also very interestingly combined all three of my interests, like museums and like art history and the history aspect of things and technology. And it was nice to see the different synergy between all of them as well. And yeah, and what technology can do to help people. And then from there, I ended up as the museum coordinator at Baycrest, and then doing exhibits, which I really enjoyed. And from there, I ended up at Springboard Clinic, where I continued to help people, but through ADHD, with ADHD symptoms, and through business planning.
Another insane experience, if I can say. A lot of very different experiences, but like you said, it's interesting to see the intersection between things. And I also noticed that the both of you mentioned that the career services at UTM have really helped you out, or have at least given you a direction. So it's really nice to hear. It's important for students to hear, especially when they have no idea what they want to do. And hopefully they'll be able to get the same advice online. I guess I'll move on to our next question then, which is specifically for Alexi. And this one writes, when you began applying for your first job after graduation, what helped you stand out in your application processes?
So I found like building a network was the most useful thing in standing out in applications. Like a lot of jobs I got ended up being word of mouth. Like for the job I had at the Power Plant Contemporary Art Gallery, that was through a professor I knew. My role as a media librarian at the CBC was because one of my friends worked there and was able to tell me when to apply and help me get an interview there. So definitely like networking with colleagues and professors and family helps you get in to the interview process. Also, just catering your applications to the specific job is very helpful too. I mean, I didn't really realize until I was actually like looking at resumes in the job I do now, like how important it is and how eye-catching it is to for an employer to see an application that really like understands the position and really understands the mission of the organization. And then you're like, oh yeah, that definitely stands out.
Yeah, I think that networking is such an important thing, and I'm hoping that students will be able to network, especially now and after, of course, the pandemic is over. Sarah, do you have anything to add to that at all?
I'm just always amazed when people talk about their network. I have not gotten one job through my network. I think it is like, I wish I had that network, but I've always, the way I've gotten my jobs is just through the application process. So I know it works both ways, but I agree with Alexi, like build that network, because so many people I know have gotten amazing jobs that way.
For those of us, I guess, who can't network then, do you have any tips on like catering your resumes, like Alexi said, or anything else that helped you stand out?
So what has worked for me has been just beefing up my resume. So whenever I apply, it's not just a standard resume. It's like, and if you want to, read articles that I've read, go here. If you want my LinkedIn, go here. This is my website. These are certifications that I have, because you really are applying to a job with 500 other people, and your main goal is you need to stand out. And so if you don't have that internal connection, the only thing you have is your CV and your resume. And I truly don't believe that you have one resume and CV for 20 job applications. I personalize each and every single one. And something that I do that I learned through the career center at UTM was, in the beginning of each of my CVs, I write a specific two sentences to say exactly why I'm interested in the field that the organization works in. So those are just some tips that have worked for me in the past.
Perfect, thank you so much. And speaking of actually beefing up your resume, another question that we got addressed to the both of you, so I suppose I can go to Alexi first, is are there any extracurriculars that you can suggest to help students along their career paths?
I mean, for me in the career path that I chose in museum studies and information, what helped me get into my graduate program was doing extracurriculars and volunteering around the field in order to get that experience. And it also helped me determine if I was interested in it as well. But I'd say also like extracurriculars, you know, if you're in a sports team, if you're like into music ensembles or joining any sort of club, and you can definitely build skills relevant to any sort of career path. Like being, it shows like for sports and music, it shows like you're a team player, or like if you're into drama, you're like a creative thinker. So there's different ways to use extracurricular activities to your advantage.
Yeah, for sure. Like you mentioned, I think there are a lot of interchangeable skills that students can get from different clubs, and there are so many clubs that are offered at UTM or just in general. And so, yeah, I think it's really interesting to be able to take something like music or take something like sports, which you think wouldn't apply at all to, say, a career in like history or just like archival, anything along those lines. But you can actually take those skills, and as long as you can put them properly on your resume, I think they can help a lot. Sarah, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Sorry if you hear my dog barking in the background. So I loved all the extracurriculars that I was involved in my undergraduate and my graduate program. And I honestly would, even if it's outside of your comfort zone, really recommend that you join at least one extracurricular activity, because when you start applying for jobs after graduation, and if you haven't had internships, that's what you're going to be talking about. And employers will be asking, you know, how do you work in a team? How do you work in stressful situations? And a lot of the times I talked about, you know, when I don't know if UTM still has this, but I was part of the dinosaurs club because I took a dinosaurs course, and that was really exciting and fun. But just like the people I met there, the professors I met through that extracurricular activity ended up being my references as well for my job applications. And I remember I didn't join anything until second year, and I was really shy and nervous, and I didn't know anyone in the club that I was joining, but you meet people so quickly, you become friends with them so quickly, and then it really does, you gain so many skills that way.
I guess to just build off of that, since Alexi mentioned that she got quite a few jobs from networking, did you ever meet anyone from one of your extracurriculars that was able to give you any helpful tips or anything along those lines?
So, go ahead.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Okay, I was just going to say I worked in student life, and that we hosted a TEDx UofT Mississauga conference. And Kate McGartland was her name. She ended up being my reference for absolutely everything that I applied for, and just the resilience that she taught us while working in there, like hosting this big conference with 200 students. That translated in the interviews and the way that I spoke about it with such passion. And then Kate was, as a reference of mine, was able to back me up. It was a huge key, I think, in getting the first job that I got after graduation.
Yes, for sure. I think references are something that we haven't brought up yet, but I think they're very important. And Alexi, I know you had something you wanted to say.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, the extracurriculars is definitely useful for getting references. And then I remember one time, so at the National Ballet, they were actually hiring an archivist back then. And so, like, because I already had worked with them, it just established that reputation and also helped with the application process. So yeah, so if you end up doing like volunteer work or something outside of like university clubs, it can help you further your career path as well, if that's where you want to go.
Out of curiosity, this is just a question that I've thought of, but have either of you ever participated in a work study position? No, okay, no problems. Just because I'm sure there were some students who were wondering about how useful that is as opposed to extracurriculars, but I think there are definitely positives in each one. So I'll move on to the next question, which came from a registered attendee, and this one is for Alexi specifically. So Alexi, how relevant were your studies to your current career?
So in terms of English and history, I found the history aspect is, well, it's all useful. I think in terms of history and English, though, it was helpful in developing certain skills, like because you're doing a lot of writing and researching. like those skills come in handy when you work in any sort of job I've been working in. Just because like right now I'm like researching business strategies and like taking that information and summarizing it for our CEO, and also like for museums, researching different like episodes in history in order to create exhibits, or researching orangutans and making exhibits on them as well. So that was definitely helpful and applicable to any job I've had. And also like create critical thinking and like evaluating sources that you're looking at as well. So everything I've learned from the program is useful in some regard.
And I know you did a master's, so was that like build on your education very helpful to your current career as well?
Yeah, so that gave me more of like the theoretical and practical knowledge for some of the positions I held. I think by far the most useful course of my master's program was actually like a technology and database course, and going through like how databases work and how they're organized. And I've been drawing on that in all positions I've had. So, which is random because I was not very comfortable with technology. So it was a surprise to me that that turned out to be the most useful thing I've learned.
You know, I think it just goes to show that you should try to take things that are outside of your comfort zone. You should try new things, see what sticks, see what's helpful. I think a lot of courses, like we mentioned before, they have these skills that you can use for just about any career and any field. So yeah, I think that's like the main takeaway that I'm taking from this, is just kind of like go out of your comfort zone a little bit. Our next question then I will address to Sara is, do you have any advice as to how a student can prepare for entering the job market? I know we've already kind of addressed a few of the major things, but just anything else that you want to add, or specifically about the market itself?
So I don't know if it's changed since I graduated, but I remember it being really hard and really, tough and demoralizing, because you send application after application and you keep getting rejected. And so, I can't remember who said this to me, but they said, just know you're not alone. Everyone's going through this. And that really did help me keep my spirits high. It can take anywhere between 3 to 6 months to get that first job. I was in the middle of that. It took me about 4 months to get my first job after graduating. And it's all, for me, what was really helpful was just trying to find ways to keep myself productive, because you spend so much time in undergrad studying extracurriculars, meeting friends, like your days are so packed, and then you graduate and it's nothing. And so it was really important for me to, go to the gym, keep applying. I started applying to get certifications in the middle of that process between graduating and my first job. And it's about not losing hope and not jumping to accept the first offer that's given to you. Just have faith in your own value and know that the right job offer will come for you. So, keep holding out if that first job offer isn't what you want.
Actually, on that point, I know, because you're mentioning it can take months until you get something. So are there any other tips or advice that you would give? For example, if you have that one job and you're not too keen on it, but it seems like it's the only thing on your plate, was there anything that helped you to get through that time to like hold on to for one job that you really wanted?
So I moved to Toronto and I had an apartment to pay for. So, I made sure that I got a part-time job working at, I think it was Club Monaco, just because I didn't want financial reasons to force me to accept the first job that came to me. And having that part-time job as a cushion for me to like hold out a tiny bit longer really helped me. And that's just a very practical piece of advice. I think you need a really strong support system of friends and family to say like, you're worth it, keep holding on. And that was really important for me as well. And in hindsight, I'm really glad that I did wait, because I had 2 job offers that just didn't feel right. That would have been fine. I'm sure I would have figured things out. But because I held out, I got this really amazing investigative journalism opportunity just because I waited a month or 2 longer. And so just, don't think that you're worth anything less than you are. And I think just holding firm to that belief, I think, is really important.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I'm sure like plenty of students are going to be facing similar problems. And yes, just a reminder that better things will come, even if it doesn't seem like it. I actually noticed that we have a question from our audience. I will address it to the both of you, and it goes, what advice would you give to a student majoring in English who does not know what job or field to go into? I suppose we can start with Alexi since she hasn't spoken in a bit.
There's like some background noise happening here, so hopefully it's still okay. But for me, I kind of understand where that student's coming from, because I was in the same boat too. Like, I pursued an English and history degree at UTM because those are the subjects that interested me. And then when I got into my third year, I was like, what am I going to do after graduation? And that's when I went to the Career Center, and then they encouraged me to do career cruising, which, you know, you do in high school, but like it's different when you're doing it in university and you're like looking at all the jobs that you can do. And then just kind of evaluating and seeing what interests you. And then know after graduation, like you might get a job and then realize it's not for you, but you don't have to stay in that job. You can like change and be open and do like multiple contracts or do multiple jobs. It's like, just keep it open and maybe you'll fall into something. You'll figure it out and fall into something you enjoy.
Yeah, for sure. Career cruising seems a bit scary, especially like you mentioned, if you're in your third or fourth year and it's kind of graduation is creeping up on you, you're not exactly sure what to do. But yeah, I think like we mentioned before, I think it's totally fine to just go between jobs, find something that fits for you. And I think shadowing is probably a good idea if possible. Do either of you have any experience with job shadowing at all?
I mean, yeah, I believe so. Like, I feel like I did do it, but I can't remember. That's right. I did it at the ROM. I job shadowed a collection registrar just to get a sense of like what she did in the museum. And that was really interesting just because like I got to see the back end of the museum, which was like kind of new to me, but like it kind of just shows you the different possibilities that are available to you. Because a lot of jobs, you like, you know, the standard ones like teacher, lawyer, but then you don't realize like what else is available. And there's like, the world's the limit. There's like so many things out there.
Yeah, for sure. I'll admit that when I saw both of your profiles, I didn't even know that those jobs existed. So I was pleasantly surprised, I would say, by what is out there and just how many possibilities that there are, especially like the students asking, I'm sure, with like an English degree. I will go to Sarah in case she had anything else to add to that student's question. Please let me know if you need me to repeat it as well.
I would just say if you're in the English program, you have a huge, huge asset and skill, which is you know how to write. And that's so necessary and needed in today's industry. I've been in so many jobs where a manager has come and be like, this person does not know how to write. And, you know, that's, so you're already starting off with a huge advantage. It's something that I know is really sought out after and wanted in the workplace these days. And just to add on to one of Alexi's points about you always have a choice, like, please just go after what interests you. And if you realize on day 2, you don't, you know, you're not feeling it, just leave. Like, you always have a choice to do that. I know one colleague of mine quit after one day and everyone was like, oh my God. But I was like, you know, respect to this guy. He knows what he wants and he's not afraid to recognize it and act upon it. So just know that your skills are really sought after in the workplace that we're in right now, and that you always have a choice if you realize the path you followed isn't working out. And I've been there. I've done so many hard turns in my career. I started off in one place and ended up in another. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'll admit, as an English student, typically I get these looks like, what are you going to do with that? But I don't think people realize just how, I guess, versatile the skill is, like especially writing, critical thinking, argumentative skills. They are, like you said, they're sought after. So I think to answer the student's question, just like as one line, try different things out. Like, you never know what's going to stick, I suppose. And like you mentioned, you're not stuck in anything. Speaking of careers, I suppose I have a question for the both of you, and it goes, could you take us through what a day looks like in your career, and is there a balance between family commitments and hobbies? I can turn to Alexi first.
A day in my career. Well, I typically work from like 8:30 to 4:30, and because of like the COVID situation, it's remote work now. So I feel like there's a lot more flexibility in what you do in a work day. Like you can kind of dictate your hours as you choose, at least at Springboard Clinic. So that's kind of nice. And my day basically looks like, you know, working with this closely with the CEO to research different business opportunities and working on different communications for our staff, and also marketing some of our courses through social media and MailChimps and other avenues as well. And every day is different. So I might be working on one project one day, and then next week or a month from now, it's something completely different. Like right now we're revamping our website, so I'm working on that. So.
And do you find that moving between projects gets a little bit stressful? Are there times where you have to spend more time on work and you don't have time for other things that you enjoy, or does it just kind of seem like a steady flow for you?
It's a steady flow. At times it's stressful if you have multiple things coming at once, but I think you just have to make the judgment call for yourself, and just like, as long as you meet the deadlines or communicate with your manager, then you're pretty much good. I feel like it's less stressful than school. It's more sort of like relaxed and flexible. I think university prepares you well. It's like you get out and you're like, wow, that was a whirlwind, and real life isn't quite like that.
Glad to hear it. As someone who's taking 5 courses, I'm sure that having, I guess, just like an 8:30 to 4:30 job would be a little bit less stressful. At least you're focusing on one thing at all times. But I'll turn to Sara just to hear what her workday is like, in case I'm making a generalized statement too quickly.
Okay, so I currently work on the bank robbery portfolio at the CBA. So the Canadian Bankers Association is the national lobbyist group for all financial institutions in Canada. And so when I say I manage the bank robbery portfolio, basically what that means is, say that there's a robbery in Halifax or a bank robbery in Toronto, I get a phone call, a bank robbery happened, and my job is to just make sure that I write a concise analysis of what happened from, okay, so the suspect entered the bank, what did he say, what was he wearing, who did he talk to, how did he demand money, did he break into the vault, and how did he escape, is law enforcement after him or her? And so I create this 1 to 2 page analysis. I send it to all of the banks in Canada, so everyone knows that there's a bank robber out there. And I basically coordinate communication between all parties involved to make sure that there's no miscommunication, because in the event of a bank robbery, multiple people are involved. And my job is just to make sure that everyone knows exactly what's going on and that there's no misinformation. But just like Alexi said, there's a lot of, day-to-day tasks that differ. So sometimes I'm also helping out with industry meetings, whether that's in the cybersecurity field or emergency management. We have a very small team, so it's kind of all hands on deck. So whenever we're shorthanded one place, we all jump in to help. And so I definitely agree that, university really prepares you in terms of the juggling aspect. And I also agree that it's a lot easier in the workplace.
Glad to hear it. I should ask then, is it just as structured as Alexi's day? Do you have like, let's say like an 8:30 to 4:30, or is it just kind of sporadic throughout the day?
So yes, it is 8:30 to 4:30, but because I can't predict when a bank robbery happens, I do have that flexibility there. And so when I do have, usually there's a bank robbery every day, but in the event that there isn't one, I'm often helping out my colleagues or spending that time on furthering my skills by taking courses.
So are these courses work related, or is it just something that you're doing on the side right now?
So I'm really grateful to work for a place that is really supportive of taking courses in any field that I'm interested in. So I've always had a passion for investigative journalism and human rights. So right now I'm taking a course completely unrelated to my job. It's provided by Harvard U, and anyone can sign up and complete this online. And it's in human rights and investigative journalism in that field. So completely unrelated, but I think a lot of employers these days do provide that for their employees, is just, you know, spend 20% or 10% of your time pursuing something that you're passionate about that's unrelated to your job.
Glad to hear. I didn't even know that was an option, but it's nice to know that if you ever want to, I don't know, investigate something else that you're interested in, you have the chance. And good luck with your course, by the way.
Thank you.
I have a question for you, Sarah, actually next, which is, what is the best advice you could give a student wanting to go into your field?
Oh, that's so hard. I think the best advice that I can give is don't try to, you know, assimilate your interests and careers with the general population. Like, I think when you have genuine interests and genuine interests that you enjoy, that really helps you stand out. So, you know, if you like, say, I don't know, for some reason manga came into my head. If you really love animated comics and manga, like just have that be a part of something you talk about. And I think, you know, passions really do stand out and make you so much more genuine, especially in a field where it is so heavy, and a lot of the times you're working with a lot of really sad stuff. And so when you say, you know, outside of work, I cycle for 4 hours, like, I think that really helps people get to know you, especially in an interview. But also just keep, I think, I keep talking about these certifications and extra courses, but I really do think it helps you stand out, because it's a really competitive field. And so, you know, I'm not trying to say be unique, but like be you, and also do as much extra certification or coursework that you can find.
Yeah, I think that totally makes sense. And it's interesting that you would mention something like manga, let's say. No, it's interesting, because I feel like a lot of students feel the need to kind of jam all their interests in exactly the area that they want to go into. But as human beings, we're interested in different things. So it's nice to know that you can still kind of like keep, let's say, like a bit of you or a uniqueness just into your job. Alexi, I'll ask you the same question, actually, just about any advice that you could give a student wanting to go into your field, because I'm sure there are people who are interested in research, or I know quite a few English/history students. So anything that you want to say there?
I know in the museum field in particular, it's very competitive. So I'd echo Sarah saying, like, follow your passions, be passionate, just be you, and it'll come through. I remember one memorable interview I had was at Baycrest with like one of the hiring managers, and it just because I was passionate about like dementia and its impact, and how like museum objects could be used to help people with dementia, you know, regain some memories, or like that reminiscence sort of like therapy helps. And they wanted to put this into like this app called Art on the Brain, but use it with visual art and like design games around that. And so like the interview turned into like a brainstorming session, and we were, you know, bashing ideas off each other. And so that's really attractive as well, I guess, to employers, because I was hired for the position. So you just like never know when you're, just be you and people will come.
So on that note, I should just ask, other than like, let's say that interview, which again, congratulations on that. Do you find that your personal interests relate to your work at all, just outside of obviously your studies?
Yeah, well, I find like my interests like tend to evolve a lot, and I have like other interests on the side that don't really like involve my career at all. It's like that way they are kind of like a nice break. But I also find that when I'm working on something, I end up being like getting super interested in it as well. Like, so like, for example, with like mental health and, you know, like the health field in general, because I was working at Baycrest and on this app, I became more interested in it. And then it's kind of like applicable in my current job, because it's in the mental health field and ADHD in particular, and doing research into ADHD just made me more interested in it, because I always want to know more, which I think is kind of like the nice thing about research in general, is just like you get to learn different things. And then that's an interest in itself, right? Just like the thirst for knowledge and pursuing knowledge.
Yes, for sure. And I think based on, let's say, history or English courses, I think you do get that sense of research. And if you're passionate about it, then I think it'll definitely play into your career or perhaps spark some new personal interests, hopefully. But like you said, interests evolve. So I don't think anything that you may be worried about might not fit into your career will ever affect you in the future. You might find something that might spark your interest later. So it's good to hear. And I see that we actually got another question from the audience. It's not addressed to anyone in particular, so I suppose I'll ask it to you both. Did you at any point feel like you didn't know if you were fit for the career you were pursuing, and how did you cope with those negative thoughts? I will turn to Sara first.
So I think that's a great question. I know imposter syndrome is a real thing, and I think the amount of people who struggle with it are more than we realize. I know that I've definitely had these thoughts all the time, especially because when you enter a really competitive industry or, you know, a job that you're passionate about, you suddenly realize everyone around me are these brilliant, intelligent human beings. Like, why am I here? And I think that, you know, it's an ongoing process, but you have to remind yourself, like, I'm here for a reason. Like, finishing the English and drama program at UTM is not an easy thing to do. Like, I completed that, I survived that, I got hopefully great grades. But you know, that you're there because you worked for it. And what I've realized through my experiences is that what people value more than anything else is a strong work ethic. So someone may be able to talk and debate better, or you know, they seem more influential in the workplace, or they're in a higher position than you are. But if you work hard, if you're there on time, if you show your work ethic, people recognize that and they really do appreciate that. And on the flip side, people will also recognize when people don't put those hours in and don't put that effort in. And so whenever you have that feeling, channel it into, I'm just going to work really, really hard, you know, have faith that I'm here because I worked for it. And that, you know, it's just fake it till you make it kind of thing.
I will say that upon entering university, I definitely got that feeling that you described, where it's like I'm surrounded by these brilliant people. I don't feel like I fit in at all. So I'm sure it does carry through into the workplace, but yes, I've noticed that work ethic is definitely something that teachers and employers value. I think everyone just values work ethic in general. It shows that you're a responsible person. It shows that you actually value what you're doing, and I think above all, that's what people look for in a job. Alexi, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think Sara brought in like a very important point. Like there have been, like, I can speak personally for me, like there have been times where like I felt unfit for a role, but then you just like have to remind yourself you were like hired for a reason. Even if you don't have all the answers, you showed potential, and you just have to show that through your work ethic, and just know that you're there for a reason and you have a lot to contribute, even though you don't feel like it at times.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I have a question. Yes, for you, Alexi, actually. Can you give any advice as to how to advance your career once you were working in your field?
I'd say one important advice I received is like, if you start to feel like you're stagnating in a position, it's best to find something new. Like, yeah, and so that you continue to grow as a professional. Like if you like fall out of love with your job and you just are looking for a change, then go for it. And then yeah, I found that was helpful for myself. There, like, yeah, I won't get too much into that, but yeah, definitely when you'll know when it's time to move on, and when it is, it'll be a good decision for you to follow what you need.
Yeah, for sure. I'm unfortunately I'm not in the job market, so I've never had to face that stagnant feeling like you mentioned. But were there any indicators that you found that were like really kind of right in your face that it's time to go?
Yeah, well, you just become sort of, well, for me, I just became sort of like unhappy, and I kind of knew intrinsically like I was unhappy, but also like I was like, no, but I love this job. But also like you start doing the same things over and over again. And you're like, you know what, I need a new challenge and I need a new change. And if you can't get it in the position you're working in, then that means you'd have to go elsewhere. But I mean, another way you can advance your career is to find like a mentor, or if you have a manager that really supports your professional development and wants to help you grow, then that's another way that you can have that support and sort of to move forward. Like my manager at Baycrest Health Sciences, who is also my manager now, she moved positions and took me with her. But yeah, she's always had always watched my back and is very encouraging and always like wanting to help me grow. And I feel like I learn a lot from her. So which is why I also accepted this new position, because yeah, lifelong learning is what I like to do.
I see that networking coming in that you were talking about earlier. You have someone that has your back, and it's really nice to hear. I saw Sarah nodding very aggressively while you were talking about having someone having your back. Sarah, do you have anything you want to add?
I just, I really do feel like I've been through exactly what Alexie's been through. Like in my last position, I would walk into the office and be fantasizing about it being 5. So you will know when it's time to leave. And if you have, so the current director that I work with now is very much a mentor. And I've spoken to him about, what are the potential advancement opportunities for me in this place. And we talk very frankly and openly. It is possible to have that relationship in a workplace. And he's just like, stay with this company for a few more years and then make a switch. Like you can find that type of mentor who can guide you through these really sometimes difficult situations at work.
It's a very optimistic take, and I'm appreciating it. It's nice to hear. Typically, when I hear things about the workplace, it's all very competitive, but it's nice to hear that at least sometimes you have someone who has your back. So it's great to hear. I have another question for the both of you. I'll start with Alexi again, and it goes, what has been the most difficult aspect of life after graduation for you?
I have to say, the process of doing job applications, Sarah mentioned it was pretty, I don't remember what word she used in particular, but I found it pretty like soulless. Like it's very draining and it's easy to feel like discouraged. I remember like submitting 100 applications and only getting interviews for 3 of them. So it's awful. But after that 3 to 6 months and you get something, it feels so good. So definitely keep it up and know you're not alone. But that was the worst part by far.
Yeah, 3 out of 100 it does sound a little disheartening. But you, like you mentioned, you finally get there, and I think then things start to really like get back on track and you feel like yourself, hopefully. Yeah, I know you mentioned that Sarah kind of touched on this earlier, but Sarah, do you have anything else to add? Anything else that might have come up?
I just want to say I totally agree. 3 out of 100 sounds right. I think I also got maybe 3 out of 100, like at 3 interviews out of 100 applications. And that really does frustrate you so much. And when you do enter the workplace, you come from having done so much in your undergrad, you juggle 5 courses, extracurriculars, you have exams every day, at the end of the semester. And when you get there, you're just an entry-level professional and you're like, I can do so much. And sometimes you're tasked with the most meaningless job, like tasks at the workplace. And so I think that's just a part of being an entry-level professional. You just gotta like get through it. And then you can start really doing, more work that you actually enjoy.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear about that, because I know everyone mentions that like you can't just have a bachelor's when you're going into the job market. You should probably have something on top of that, like you mentioned, extracurriculars or just like extra courses. But like you are just living proof that if you stick with it, you can get somewhere that you really enjoy, and it's really optimistic. It's good to see. I know that I'm kind of jumping around different timings in your life, but the next one is about grad school, so I guess prepare for that. It's for the both of you in case you have anything to say. And the question is, were there any specific requirements for your grad school programs that you didn't know of beforehand, and how did you deal with those at that point in time? Either one of you wants to start.
I can start. Well, luckily for me, there wasn't anything like unexpected in my grad school application. I remember it being kind of confusing because I was applying to like the concurrent programs to do them at once. So there was some kind of nuance to that application process. Yeah, the Faculty of Information had an information session like 4 or 6 months beforehand, and they went over the application process. And then after that, it was just getting it done, getting references. So if you're like, so that's just why it's good to do extracurriculars and build sort of like a network if you can, and get to know your professors, because they'll be key in writing those reference letters for you for grad school. So that's kind of like, I know it's easy to get like bogged down with like schoolwork and stuff, but yeah, you just want to keep that in mind if you want to go to grad school, that you're going to need reference letters, sometimes academic ones. But yeah, that was kind of it, really.
Yeah. Did you do your master's right after your bachelor's?
I did. I just went right in. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I know. I think the student who put in this question was just wondering if there were any courses that you saw were required and you didn't have them, and that time you were a little bit panicked, but it sounds like everything went smoothly for you, that's good.
Yeah, I think they're pretty open in terms of like, because people who go to the Faculty of Information come from a wide range of backgrounds, because there's so many different streams in the information side. There's like libraries, archives, user design, there's a whole bunch, and the museums, and it just like, you just have to have like X number of like sort of academic courses. But if you're in history and English, or like if you're in English, you've already done those sort of like high level courses. I think the concern for that would be like, if you're in sort of more practical program like fine arts, where you're not really doing the research heavy courses, then they would be a little bit more concerned, and they'd like to see you can do the work, which is why they value, you know, people from an English program with like that intense coursework. Not saying that fine arts isn't intense, but like it's sort of a different sort of skill set.
No, for sure. I mean, I know for masters, let's say, it sounds very research heavy, so it makes sense that from English to a bachelor's in English to a master's, it would make sense for that research aspect to be kind of completed. But I'll turn to Sarah in case she had a different experience, or if there were any like panicky moments that she had at all.
So having done a double major in English literature and business, I didn't actually have some of the courses required for my master's, and it was a master's of global affairs at UofT. And surprisingly, you needed to have done 2 levels of economics and some finance courses, which I still don't know why why you needed them. But what was so I had that panicky moment, but what was great was that, you know, they didn't evaluate that upon admission, but if you didn't have it, you had to take it once you were in the graduate program. So my application was entirely based on an interview and an essay and my grades. And then once I was admitted, they looked through my coursework and said, okay, you're gonna have to take these additional courses to graduate.
So did you apply, I guess, right after your bachelor's as well then?
No, so I did almost 2 years of journalism work, and then I applied to my master's.
Okay, and so they just let you complete the missing courses while doing your master's, or right before?
While doing my master's, and there were 30 of us. Like, it was a 60-person program, and half of us did not have the requisites, the math requisites, because you don't think going into political science that you would need math requisites. So again, I don't know why I did it, but it's required.
Okay. Well, it's good to know though, because I know, yeah, a few students might be panicking about applying to grad school, and all of a sudden they find out they need something like finances.
They'll work with you. If they want you, they will make sure that you can get the degree.
Okay, that again, really encouraging, really great to hear, to be honest. Speaking of masters, actually, we had a question for Alexi, since she's completed 2 masters that I believe you mentioned were joint or concurrent. So do you have any advice for undergraduate students regarding time management then?
Time management is also always one of those tricky things. I mean, you only have 24 hours in a day. And so just like, well, it's always difficult. It's something I'm still working on. But what I found useful as an undergrad was just mapping out my schedule, seeing what was, taking up most of my time, making note of like what needed to happen. So like you make a schedule and then you write like, okay, so I need X amount of time to eat, to sleep, and then you see what's left, and then you put in your classes, and then you see what time is left, and then you have to split all your tasks up and put them in. And so that kind of gave me a visual about like where my time was going, and make sure to schedule a lot of breaks, because I do this thing where I don't, and then I'm like always behind schedule. So definitely factor in breaks because you're not a machine. And then in general, there's a difference between trying to be perfect in everything and then doing what you can in the time you have. And sometimes you just have to make that judgment call. And it all depends on your priorities. Like you could go to that party, but then if you have a report the next day, just know like you have to get it done before class in a certain amount of time, and it's not going to be perfect.
Yeah, for sure. I think a few of us needed to hear that. We are running a bit out of time right now. So Sarah, if you have anything quickly to add on. No?
I think Alexi nailed that.
Okay. Perfect then. Thank you so much for attending our Q&A then. You've been so wonderful, so helpful, and yes, thank you for coming. I'd now like to welcome Ishwa back on screen.
I think you're in. Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry. I was saying, thanks, Roxy, for moderating. It was a really great discussion. I'm sure the students got a chance to learn some interesting things, which I'm sure will be very helpful to their careers. And on behalf of the U of T Mississauga English and Drama Student Society and UTM Alumni Relations, thank you, Sara and Alexi, for their time and for sharing their experiences with us. Your insights have been really invaluable as we navigate through university and think of our careers post-graduation. I know we're all a little bit nervous about that. But thank you to our audience for your questions and your participation during this panel. And then again, a huge thank you to Alumni Relations for their support during this event. I want to remind both students and recent graduates that as you think about the next steps toward your career, there are a wealth of resources offered by the UTM Career Center and the Career Learning Network. You should see a link in the chat now to the Career Learning Network where you can register for upcoming events or synchronous workshops, as well as view job postings. Through the UTM's Career Center, you can find resources like the Resume and Cover Letter Writing Toolkit. You can learn about the Job Shadow Program and the Work Study programs. And you can learn about some of the other careers that English and Drama alumni have gone into. I highly encourage everyone to look at the English and Drama program plans, which are an overview of many academic and co-curricular opportunities to help you get the most of your UTM experience. You should see a link to the UTM program plan page in the chat now. Last, certainly but not the least, you can always make an appointment to see a career counselor or an employment strategist by calling the Career Center directly. When this webinar ends, you will have the option to take a post-event survey, and we do hope that you will take a couple of minutes to complete it, as your feedback is helpful for us in planning future events. And thank you to our audience for your questions and participation during this panel. We're going to be hosting a short networking opportunity immediately following this discussion, where you can get the chance to speak directly with our panelists and meet some of the other students. Please use the link provided in the chat to access the room after we end this session. And in case you'd like to review any of the content from today's event, in case you missed something, everyone who registered to attend the event will be receiving a link to the recording soon. We hope you have a chance to join us in the networking session starting soon. And have a wonderful evening, everyone.